Hello guys, this is Tayo. Welcome to my Power BI tutorial for beginners. Now this video is designed to precede our lecture 5 of the data analytics class for beginners. If you have not seen that, I recommend you try and watch that first before proceeding with this video. A link to the lecture will be dropped in this video. So please do well to see that lecture before moving on with this, because that is where we discuss the primary beginning of Power BI, which is Power Query. So it is very important to understand how to use Power Query before moving on with Power BI. Now this video is going to be in bits, in parts I mean. So we are going to have part 1, part 2, I don't know, till the very end. So we will have another experience with Power Query along the way, but it is very important to see that video because I think we explained Power Query from the basics. All right, so when you open Power BI for the first time, this is what you will see. This is how it will pop up on your system. Now these, what you see here, they are the works I've done with Power BI. So your files will be here. Then you you may want to try out the tutorials that Power BI has for you. I've never tried it, and but most times you will want to you know click this exit button so that you can get rid of this pop-up. Then you can now be at the very, this is the interface, the primary interface, the home. Now you can see it is very similar to that of Microsoft Excel to some extent. So here you see the home where you can get the data just like Power Query. The get data in Power Query is what you see here. Then everything here is basically data, getting data from sources. And again, just like Power Query, you can use Power BI to get data from wide range of sources. So if you watch the Power Query um, lecture that I just talked about, you will understand these things more. So then moving on to transform data, what you see here is when you've retrieved data from any source and you need to go back to Power Query to do some edits to this data, then this is where you use the transform data. Normally you can just right click on that data as well. You will see that as we go on. Then the new visual is just like creating a new visual. Then test box is that's pretty much straightforward. So when you want to insert a test box, more visuals. So when you click more visuals, you can get um, from your file if you've downloaded, or you can get from the app source if you have the license. So most of these things you can actually do them without coming to the ribbon. So we have measure, we have new measure and quick measure. um okay, you can see these as well in the, so let's move to the insert, because what we have in the insert calculations, we have them in insert and data modeling in the ribbon. So let's move to the insert segment. So what we saw earlier, the new visual and more visual, is what we see here. Now key influencers and decomposition tree are just one type of visualization which you can see right here. Then the paginated report, Power Apps, Power Automate, these are features that you will enjoy the best when you have the official license of Power BI, or when you've purchased an official license. So just like the insert, okay, sorry, this is the insert. So from here you can insert buttons which you can attach to a particular action. For instance, if you insert the back button, you may attach the action to go back to previous page. something like that. Then this is the shape, of course. This is very straightforward. So you can insert shapes in Power BI, then you can insert image as well. So under the modeling is where we have calculation. So this is where we talked about DAX, DAX, X for saxophone. So we call it DAX, which stands for Data Analytics Expression. So it is like that formula you write in Microsoft Excel. So we'll get there as well in bit. Then you can create a table. Yes, so that's pretty much about the modeling aspect. And the view aspect is where you design your dashboard, or to change the color, to change the page view, to insert grid lines or not. So then we can do filters, then bookmark. Bookmark is one of interesting features in Power BI. So we'll get there as well. So this is just a brief introduction to Power BI. Now what we want to do to kickstart this lecture is to go to the Power Query Excel file that we created in the lecture 5. So what we'll do is I have an Excel file here that says Power Query. Now this is the result of the Power Query um, lecture. When I say result, I mean when we, in the last lecture, what we did is we went to internet and we pulled out data and we did some edits, and we arrived at this. So that's why I said this is the result um of the lecture. So what we'll do here is we'll take this data to Power BI, then we'll do some visualizations with it. Now don't forget that everything we did in the last lecture with Power Query, we can do exactly the same with Power BI. Remember I told you in the last lecture that whether you decide to access Power Query with Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Power BI is entirely up to you, and it depends on what you plan to achieve with the data set. So if for instance you need this data set in other software or other applications, you may want to use Excel to store the data. But if you're very certain that you only need the results or the data in Power BI only, then it is okay to access Power Query through Microsoft Power BI. Please, there is no benefit, or there is no major difference between using Power BI or Microsoft Excel to access Power Query. Now, what we'll do now is we'll use the get data to access the Power Query Excel file. So how to do that is, when you click your get data, even if you don't click your get data, Power BI has well, let me say the most common data sources already in the ribbon, just like we have it here. If you click here, if you click here, if you click get data, you are doing almost the same thing. So let's start with so let's go ahead and get our data from wherever we saved it. I don't know where you saved yours. For mine is saved in the desktop, so I'm going to click Power Query. All right. All right. So now we are going to select, I told you you can always preview your data before pulling it up. So what we have here is basically the same thing. So just click either one. And now normally you may want to transform the data, but since we transformed this already in Excel, then we can just load this straight up to our Power Query. All right. Now that our data is loaded, I want I so let's go ahead and explain the three visuals, or yeah, the three visuals in Power BI. The first view is the report view. This is where you see the canvas and you see visualizations, fields, and you can expand your filters. So under the report view is where you see the canvas. This is where you build your visualizations, you create your dashboard. Then you can add filters to your dashboard. You may want to filter a dashboard. Maybe you want to filter the whole dashboard to a particular year, to a particular product, to a particular category. You can do that with the filter. Then the visualization is where you select the type of visuals you want. So you can always close and expand any of these fields. So the field is where you have your data. Now you can see the match one we pulled from Excel is here, and these are the columns inside our data set. All right. So you can always expand or close these fields. So by default, the visualization and fields are expanded. Then filter is always closed. Now the second view is the data view. So this is where you see your data in form of a spreadsheet, just like you would see it in Excel. Now this is where you have the column. This is the match one data. So these are the countries, the continents, and total cases. Then the last one, okay, in the data view, you can do some, you can make some changes with your data. For instance, you may want to change the column name. Then you may want to change the data type. Remember I told you in almost all the lectures we've had that data type is very, very important in anything related to data analytics. So if your data is not well described, you may want to correct that in the data view. So like in this case, I may want to say the data category for this column is um, country. Then I may also want to say that the data category for this is continent. Now you have different types, so depending on your data sets, you can choose the right one. I just want to let you know these are the things you can do with your data in the data view. Now the last one is the model. This is where we create relationship between our tables. Now, because we only have one table, there is no need to create any relationship. But in situations where you have 2, 3, 5, 10 tables, you may want to tell Power BI how these tables are related to each other. So in case you have a table for your sales, you have table for your expenditures, you have table for your staffs, you have table for many things. You may want to relate this table together using the data modeling, the data connection or data relationship feature in Power BI. This will allow your dashboard to interact with each other. So suppose you have your sales table, then your expense table, and you create visualizations from these two tables. Now you may want these visualizations to interact with each other. To do that, you need to create a relationship with between the first table and the second table, which is in this case your income and expenses. So that's what you can do in your model table, in your model view. So without wasting much of our time, let's go ahead and start with our first visualization. So our first visualization will be Okay, please don't forget you can also rename your data. So suppose you don't like the March one, you may want to call it COVID-19 data. So sorry, I'm not supposed to use this. All right, so COVID-19 data. So let's go ahead and create our first visualization. And what we want to do with our first visualization is to know the cases by continent. Remember, this is a COVID-19 data set. So we want to know which country, which continent has the most cases, the most COVID-19 cases. So the first one, we are going to use something called the clustered bar chart. So this is a clustered bar chart. So when you select it, it comes to your canvas empty. Now, um, just like in one of our lectures, I was explaining to you in Excel when we wanted to create pivot tables, the fields, the right data for fields. So please, depending on your selected visualization type, the fields will varies. So you must know what to put in tables and what to put in x-axis and what to put in y-axis. So if you keep on playing with that, you will get it. Most times, most people get um, they get confused with the y-axis and x-axis. I do that myself. Then when I notice it is wrong, I just correct it and so on. So what we want to do is know the total cases by continent. So when you select your total cases, there are ways to do this. First, you can select total cases and drag it into your visualization. So when you drag total cases, then you drag continents. So Power BI will determine, by default, Power BI will determine the right um, field that your data should go into. So Power BI is taking your continent to the y-axis and your total cases to x-axis. So sometimes it is correct, sometimes it is not. So you may want to do it manually. So what you can do now is, let's delete this and take continents to our y-axis and total cases to our x-axis. Another thing you can do is, instead of dragging at all, you can just check the box beside the total cases. When you check it, it will go to your provided sorry, let me undo that. Provided the visualization is selected, it has to be selected, otherwise it will not work. So when you select the visualization, you can click total. You can now check the box total cases, then check continent. So these are different ways to achieve the same thing. So congratulations, you've created your first visualization in Power BI. So you may want to expand. Sorry, this is the button I used. So we call it the focus mode. You may want to, expand the whole visualizations to cover the entire canvas. So where you can see better that Europe has the highest. Now, please, this data might not be correct, because if you watch the lecture 5 that I've been talking about, you realize that what we did to arrive at others, these are continents we could not match. These are countries we could not match um with their continent in Power Query. Normally in the real world, I would have make sure that all these countries are in their respective continent. But for the purpose of teaching, or for the purpose of the lecture, I decided to make this way. So this how to create um visualizations in Excel. Now when a visualization is created, You may want to change this from bar chart to, let's say, column chart. So for instance, you can select, when this particular visualization is selected, you may want to change it to from bar chart to column chart. So all you need to do is select column chart and it will change accordingly. Also, you can expand and resize your visualization however you want it. So you may want to cover the entire canvas with it, so which is okay. However you want it is okay. All right, so let me just make it a little bit so guys, this is how to create visualizations in Power BI. I hope you are following. Now join me in the next part to see how we create more visuals and we arrange them properly to make a nice dashboard. See you in the next class.